Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. It's Halloween today, Friday, October 31st. Um, my wife and my two dogs were walking. We were all walking together outside. And, we have this brush, and sometimes the dogs disappear from sight. We're always, concerned about coyotes and things. And Buddy starts barking. Buddy's kind of a nervous dog, but he starts barking like there's something. He usually doesn't bark this way, like if there's nothing. And so Buddy comes out and I pick him up. And then we're waiting to see if there's something chasing him because he's looking back. And emerges this pig that we thought maybe was a wild boar at first. There's some wild pigs around here. But then we look at it and it looks like, domesticated pig, not a full grown one. One that's probably just weaned off its mom. And it starts following us home here.
It's a baby.
So my wife ends up, I give the dogs to my wife and I start taking pictures and videoing the thing. And I'm kind of trying to get away from it. My knees hurt a little bit. And the thing's coming and I wasn't quite sure if it was, I didn't think it was wild, but we didn't see it close up at first. And I was like, I hope it doesn't have like those tusks or something. I want to get like, accidentally. It's clearly wanting contact with us. It followed our dog and then it was following us. And I'm like, oh, it's just going to come home with us, so we might as well just embrace it. It was eating some acorns around on the way. And then we interacted it. We petted it. It kind of nuzzled our legs. Really cute pig.
It's following us. He's looking for its mom.
Look, easy. That's what it looks like. Really cute, sweet animal. My wife nicknamed him Kevin Bacon. Or Kevin. It's a girl, though. And it just disappeared then. Took off. And then came back around. And it's, I think, over at our neighbor's house. They have a better situation. People are calling around to see if anybody lost a pig nearby us, but it won't probably survive too long with the coyotes out at night. And it's kind of a sweet, little pig, so it's not really. If the coyotes could easily kill it, and that'd be that. But hopefully, somebody's adopting it because we don't have a place for it, and it's gone now. But that's our pig story. Really great thing. Really, I've always had really great animal interactions. Like I wanted to be a naturalist and study animals when I was a kid. That was my, if I had followed through on all of my kid stuff. I used to do research on animals and read about animals. And my dad promised to take me on safari, which was bullshit because he had to take Dramamine when we went on going deep sea fishing with my maternal grandfather. My dad, was always getting seasick and air sick, and he had all kinds of issues. And he was already in his 50s when I was a kid, but he promised when I reached a certain age we'd go on safari. And then by the time I reached that age, I realized it was bullshit. And so, no harm, no foul, not a big deal. But anyways, that was something that I always was interested in. My wife loves animals too. And, she loves cute things too. And, she's into like cute frogs and toads and, all those kind of squirrels and whatever we see too. So we have a lot of interactions with animals. We go on nature walks quite a bit. It's kind of our one big thing. And this pig just showed up out of, nowhere. And we don't really have a place for a pig, and we don't eat pork, and there's no way we'd kill this pig. Like, it's just, it's very hard when you raise a pig this sweet and they get, when they get big, they're kind of gross and they're maybe not as pleasant. But it's a lot harder when there's some kind of, it becomes more like a pet than a livestock animal. But anyways, that's Kevin Bacon. I should mention our neighbors have horses, and there's some kids involved that really are into the pig, and I think they're trying to convince their parents to keep it. They have a better situation. We don't have any place to safely keep the pig where predators couldn't get to it, and otherwise we would. It was just it's one of those things where an animal kind of chooses you. But then it did, and it just took off. like it's making the rounds, like it's checking out the various opportunities here in the neighborhood. Anyway, so that's the pig. Okay, greetings. Not greetings already. I'm gonna open with the pig story. Speaking of, anyways, so this video popped up last night. I was already talking about how she was really kind of inappropriate, JD Vance. A lot of people are talking about her not wearing a wedding ring and some of these other things. But this was Jesse Waters.
It's been 7 weeks since Charlie Kirk was taken from the world, but the movement he created is bigger than ever. His wife, Erika, just...
They got a big turnout here, and I don't know what it costs. I don't know if it costs anything. I don't know what they charge for these things. And maybe they don't charge anything, and they just, they do it based on donation or thing. So whatever. But they do still have a turnout, but you can have a small regional audience in different places around the country, little pockets of people. You can create an audience, but it's not translating to their YouTube videos. They've had some success with live events, and, that can make you some money, but not $20 million a year in payroll money, right? Depending on how many events you have. And so, the people are going to start wanting the Charlie Kirk bullshit storyline of his Patsy and all that stuff. They're going to want that addressed, right?
Staged her great American comeback, picking up right where Charlie left off, addressing
wow, she said.
A packed stadium with students hanging on every word.
I love you guys, truly. This.
All right, we saw this already. But here they are here. So she goes to talk to Jesse Waters afterwards.
Charlie.
You feel Charlie here right now.
I know you do too.
And so he's like, he's like an asshole. He's like not a person that feels emotions, right? Or feelings.
I feel him too.
I feel them too. I just
Well, God bless you.
Jesse, you're...
Oh, Jesse, you're amazing, Jesse. Jesse, you're amazing. She's very touchy. We saw this when she made the music video, and she was all over her co-star in the music video. She's somebody who physically touches. I'm sure she did it with Usha Vance too. So it's not just men, but she's certainly, this is her, like, whatever, her magic spell she's putting on men. Like, she's learned to get her way by. And with that gay dude she was on this reality TV show. I covered this in one of my early videos. One of my viewers told me about this. It was a really cheesy, it was low budget reality TV show on like TLC or one of those, maybe Peacock. It must have been. It was on something that I subscribed to. I don't know. I don't know how to get to TLC. So something like Peacock, but it wasn't originally on Peacock. It was something that all these streaming services buy content, and it was a show where it's singles in the Hamptons, and it was really degraded, morally degraded, very sexual, very perverse, really stupid, obnoxious people. And there's a gay dude that she dated, and in the episode, he meets her, and she's flirting with him. She's all over him. She totally wants to be his, and on the show, you could tell. And he says, they ask him at the end of the episode, she's just in the beginning, she's in one scene, and they ask his friends, these girls he's hanging out with, ask him if he's gay. And one of them says he's totally gay, right? And so he's very, he seemed very gay. But he was the only one that went to church. He really didn't go to church. He watched church online. And she bragged that she went to 2 churches. But she was very flirtatious, very touchy-feely. So she's, this is what she does. Like, this is who she is.
And God bless Turning Point USA. What do you hope to achieve for Charlie and for the country?
Oh my goodness. All of his wildest dreams for this organization and more. He left me a blueprint and all of his journals, but more so than that, I was his vault.
What do you mean? You read his journals?
Vault for literally everything. He shared everything with me, his vision, his dreams, and...
You even married, bro? Were you even married?
I know now more than ever. He was always a hard worker, but now more than ever, he's up in heaven orchestrating and sitting and
Yeah.
strategizing.
Big hands. Big hands she's got.
I can just feel it. I can feel
She
it.
can totally feel it.
And so all I want is to be able to make sure we honor Charlie, we keep fighting the good fight, and we...
Okay, so down here, this is where at the end. So she's dabbing her eyes throughout.
Jesus loves me. And so, little God winks. That's how I know Charlie's here, of all songs to sing.
It's the perfect song.
Yeah.
It's the perfect night. God bless you. You're
Yes.
ready for this. God bless you.
See, she went for a hug. He's not a affectionate person. Like, this is, she's just, I mean, she's a weird person. Thanks, Jesse.
That's just a small taste of my interview with Erika.
Just a
Kirk.
small taste. Then we went to the back room. Anyways, like, it's just fucked. And I don't know if they're doing this. Like, with all these things, I always wonder, are they doing it on purpose, right? Like, is this something that they are purposefully creating? That she sucked this bad on purpose? Because, like I've said in many of the recent videos, for the past 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer, they've been putting out information for the people in the truth community. Because they know not everyone's going to buy into the official story. They know that there's going to be always people who have doubts. And with the internet, the onset of the internet, people being able to share information, they had to, capture the truth community in one way or another. And one of the ways that they would do it is to put out their own red herrings, their own Easter eggs, and put out these things to drag people, down a path like this. And, they've had a lot of bad actors and things over the years. A lot of weird shit was released, people rehearsing their lines, crisis actors who are just not believable. I mean, they've done a lot of things like that. And so, it's hard to say, like with any of these things. You're never going to know the truth, and why would you want to? It's like, who gives a shit? Like, you can see it's fake, and that's all you need to know, and really it's not going to affect you all that much because everything's being faked, and, the system is imploding with or without these events that they're orchestrating. But, it's fucking weird. I mean, it's really weird. And so, I mean, if they're doing it on purpose, that's weird, and if this is the best that they can offer you in terms of actresses, and she's showing no real grief with nothing that's not performative. Like, we haven't seen one sincere moment of her, and she's been smiling since day one. Like, she dabs her eyes. Usually when she smiles, she then dabs her eyes, like, so she makes it look like she's smiling because she's thinking of Charlie, and then she's crying right afterwards. But the whole thing's fucked. Okay, I got a couple of comments here. Quick comments. And I had an update. The pig. Apparently one of our neighbors knows whose pig it is. The pig roams. The pig actually made the rounds. So I think it's capable of walking some miles a day, a small little pig. And so I guess they're reuniting it with the owner. Maybe it'll stop by every once in a while. It was a fun day for us. Or that part of it. I went and asked Gemini, because ChatGPT seems to really suck for me now. And I asked Gemini about how much money they charged for that event at Ole Miss, these schools, and they don't charge any money because these kids don't have any money, right? So these events are free, and so they merch up. I mean, they get their word out through merch, and they need to drive traffic to their channel and these other things, right? And so these events, which are, I assume the funeral is free and all these other things. And so if they charge money, it'd be different, but they don't have any way of making any money if their channel isn't doing well, because they're not going to sell merch. They're not going to get any of the ad revenue, and their channel is tanking. And they're absolutely shameless. They're shameless shills, and they'll take shekels. But what they won't do is question the official story of their good friend, or in Erika Kirk's case, husband's, his official death, the story about his death. And so that would be a surefire way of reviving the interest of their channel. Because, those guys over there, I'll talk about this next time I show the channel. Those guys over there are, you're replacing somebody that was the reason that people went to the channel. They connected with Charlie, and, he was bought, paid for. I mean, there's a lot of things going on there. When you replace somebody, you almost always are going to look bad in comparison, even if you're better. it doesn't work very well for you. It just doesn't. People don't accept you. People are attached to the old version. And so somebody wrote this comment. Is there some reason, or is there some rhyme or reason for calling her Monica? Erika Kirk. I used to think it was on accident, but clearly it's deliberate. Is it just because, or am I behind on all the conspiracy theories? Now, there is no good reason for it. I would say 1 out of 10 times when I call her Monica is intentional. I just do it by accident. Now, I used to do this intentionally. I used to add S's to everybody's name, like Jimmy Kimmel's. There's a certain way of speaking that some people do that. And I used to mock it or whatever it was. And sometimes I mispronounce people's names and just, as a joke. But with Erika Kirk, I don't know why I call her Monica. It'd be amazing if her real name was Monica, right? If she, wouldn't I be psychic as fuck if that was the case? But, I don't know why I do it. And I don't know any Monicas. I have never met a Monica in my life. People say Monica Lewinsky. Somebody responded by saying Monica Lewinsky, but it's not because of that. She doesn't look like Monica Lewinsky, and I don't really have much of a reference point for Monica Lewinsky. I kind of know what she looks like, and I sort of follow the Clinton thing a little bit. But the Monica on Friends, I don't watch Friends. I haven't watched that show in years. And so those are the only 2 Monicas I can think of. But, there's no rhyme and reason to it. But wouldn't it be funny if she was, this Erika Franzi thing that she had was just bullshit, and her real name was Monica. And then everyone would be like, dude. Your channel icon when I'm listening to you says pockets of the FU. I find it kind of funny, or to be hip, it made me LOL. That makes me LOL too, because it's kind of funny that pockets of the FU, which is a much more appropriate name for my channel at this point. But anyways, let's get into this other stuff here. This meme came out, this is a good meme. The only thing that got healed faster than Erika Kirk's heart was Donald Trump's ear. So that's a good one. I was one of the first people to call bullshit on the Trump assassination attempt. Just saying. So I'm always happy to see one of those, this kind of thing. Okay, so Laura fucking, she's just the nastiest person. Laura Loomer, she's Loomered herself. And she's going on this victim consciousness tour, where she's the victim. And she seems to be pissing everybody off. The Young Turks, somehow YouTube recommended this video because I watched the other one with her and Alex Jones. That was on Twitter, though, so I don't know what this is about. But anyway, she's here with Steve Bannon.
Amid all this Israel derangement syndrome that we're seeing from many people on the right.
Israel derangement syndrome? That's how you guys, you call everyone mentally ill. We don't want to give money to a country that does nothing for us but drag us into wars and conflicts. It's a shitty relationship. And so that's not derangement, that's common sense. But she's just an abomination.
Got to stop being so obsessed with Israel and so obsessed with the Jews. It's not the Israelis that are going to have another 9/11 here in our country.
No. Hang on a second.
So I guess that was that. I would watch the whole thing, but they're both horrible people. So that's what's going on there. So there's more videos on this. I don't know if this will be enough. But the idea is here. So this is about Prince Andrew. There's some stuff about Kash Patel. Candace Owens has got something on Kash Patel. I don't know if it's the same thing. But apparently he's been using governmental jets to fly his 25-year-old girlfriend around to see him. And so, I don't know if that'll end up coming to anything. But let's get to this thing first here.
Breaking news out of London, where Buckingham Palace has issued a statement saying that King Charles has started
He looks a lot worse now.
the formal process to strip Prince Andrew of his prince title. He will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and the BBC is reporting that he'll have to move to another royal estate. Earlier this month, we learned Prince Andrew would give up his other royal titles, including the Duke of York, after new revelations about his relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Pressure was also building for him to move out of the sprawling mansion at Windsor, where he lives essentially rent-free.
All right. I watched a little something, I think this morning, maybe it was Morning Joe, maybe something else. But he's looking kind of rough, and the taxpayers aren't into paying for this motherfucker's, this Jeffrey Epstein, and the girl that died, she's dead now, and he gave her $12 million. I mean, it's completely fucked, right? And he was going to Jeffrey Epstein because he needed money and his ex-wife needed money, Fergie. I mean, that's how that whole thing started in the first place. These royals, if you ever watch the show Downton Abbey, which is kind of a relatively good show, I never thought I would like it, but it was interesting. And it was a time when royals, that lifestyle, the castles and the staff and all the people, it was not sustainable. And all these people were having to sell either marry money, they were having to marry like really rich Americans or other, rich people, because they couldn't sustain, they were trading their title for money, or they had to sell off their castles and these other things. It was a dying, and it's been dying for a long time, and they had to modernize and make their estates profitable, and it's a horrible way it's just a bogus, royalty and people being born as rulers based in their genetics, it doesn't work. Kings are bad, and that's why calling Jesus the King of Kings, being a king is not a good thing. Being a queen is not a good thing, and it's not a good thing for you, and it certainly isn't for everyone else. They're parasitic. But anyways, let me see if I can find another video here. This guy shows up, Richard Quest. He shows up on New Year's Eve, dressed as a Statue of Liberty or some bullshit, with Anderson Cooper. But he's
King Charles has now begun the formal process to remove
He's looking pretty rough here, right? They fucked him here.
The titles and honours of his brother Andrew. Was Prince Andrew? Now he's just going to be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And action is also being taken to force him to surrender his lease at the Royal Lodge, the vast mansion that he lives in Windsor Park that he hasn't paid any rent on, or at least not directly. It comes as Andrew faces controversy. You're well aware of the reasons. It's all about Jeffrey Epstein. Max Foster is with me. The big difference here, Max, until now it's always been Andrew voluntary this, Andrew doing that, Andrew agreeing that, but this is different.
It's come from the king. He didn't object. I mean, read into that language, from the palace. He's basically been forced to...
The thing is, this scandal was so long ago. So this is about public opinion and, so many other things. But he threw his son under the bus. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's, the Duke and Duchess of Sucksticks. They were thrown under the bus to move away from this scandal. I mean, they fed them to the media, and they had to leave America. It was so bad for them. Of course, Meghan Markle's is a nightmare. But, they're all nightmares, but, And so they did all they could to save Andrew, and this was partly due to because the Queen, he was her favorite or some bullshit like that. If you can believe all that stuff. But, if they cared about what he did or, the girls that got abused or any of those things, they would have done this a long time ago. And, of course, King Charles hung out with Jimmy Savile. Jimmy Savile had as many of 500 kids. There was this show called Jim Will Fix It, where kids would come on and ask for something, and Jimmy Savile was a creepy fucking guy. There's a great documentary out there about how Jimmy Savile is a wizard. But he's a weird fuck if you've ever seen him. He's actually kind of worse than Jeffrey Epstein. And he was into necrophilia and other shit, occult, weird shit, And he was talking about how he was a wizard, that he worked in the mines or something as a kid. And they would say, because he was the seventh son, which is, he was born on Halloween, that kind of shit, right? Speaking of which, so, today's Halloween. But Jimmy Savile, there's a great documentary about all the weird shit about that fucking guy. It's like a YouTube video, kind of thing. But somebody did a good job on that. But like it shows you how fucked they are. It's only because he got caught, and I mean they're all pieces of shit, basically. Okay, thankfully there's no. I just sort of scanned Candace Owens' thing. She had something on Kash Patel. It was just about there was an Egyptian flight, an Egyptian military that was there that day with Charlie Kirk, and why the Egyptians? I mean, you're going after Israel, whatever. But that's whatever it is. And she was wanting Kash Patel to investigate and find out about that. And also, she was talking about being David for Charlie Kirk slaying Goliath. And, she ain't going to slay shit, right? And the Old Testament sucks. So I'm glad to skip that today. But anyways, here.
2023 and 2024, when the current FBI director was working as a podcaster obsessed with cleaning up the deep state, slashing government spending, he had one specific idea about how to do it.
Chris Wray doesn't need a government-funded G5 jet to go to vacation. Maybe we ground that plane. $15,000 every time it takes off. Just a thought.
Go take their money. Chris Wray doesn't need a private jet.
We're not the guys running around on private jets. And somebody, maybe in Congress, should ask for how many flights on a private jet Director Comey took, or my predecessor Director Wray took, and how many personal trips they took.
Don't knock it until you try it. That's what I say about private jets. The use of government jets for personal travel by former FBI director was sort of an obsession of Patel's for years.
So we know where this is going.
23, Patel called former director Chris Wray a, quote, government gangster for his jet usage, which is why it was surprising to see Patel repost this photo on Sunday of
not really surprising.
Him in his FBI branded hoodie out on a date with his country singer girlfriend, Alexis Wilkins. Now, Wilkins was performing at a Penn State sporting event on Saturday. And if you're wondering how Kash Patel got there to support her, well, public flight logs show he took a taxpayer-funded government jet.
Boom. Flight logs.
Later that night, that same jet flew from Pennsylvania to Nashville, where Patel's girlfriend lives. Now, I should know, FBI directors are required by law to use government planes for security purposes. It's a point Patel raised in May when Senate Democrats last inquired about his jet usage.
Oh, this is a great point. Do you know why I have to use a private jet? Because Congress made it mandatory.
Okay, in April 5th.
You mean you'd fly coach otherwise? Yeah, like it's just that he's a hypocrite and a bullshitter. And he's, the fact he's got that country girlfriend, country singer girlfriend, it's just so fucking weird. He's such a weird guy. He's a lawyer, like he's a defense attorney for drug dealers, and he was a public defender in Miami, and somehow he ended up being this guy who wanted to release all the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, and then came in, when he was a podcaster, and then as director and Trump's lackey, he went out there and fucking, did all this shit for Trump to block Jeffrey Epstein, and now the private jet thing. It's just par for the course. Okay, my wife sent me a couple videos, apparently.
Yuda, you just don't understand what's happening here. You just don't understand what's happening here. Sorry, Papa. We're stuck, we're flooded, my car is flooded. Within 30 minutes...
Well, when I was in Chennai, we had that big flood. It lasted for, over a day, though. But New York City, that's happening.
Look what happened here. It is crazy here. It's very dangerous. It's nuts what's happening here.
So that's what's happening there, Somebody do something. My wife also sent me this.
To make another quick update video. So I was talking to someone that works for a media organization, and they're like, why is no one covering what's happening with the banks right now and the repo market? And I was like, well, if you cover that, it's going to immediately cause a run on the banks, and it is going to cause a decline in the stock market. But here is the seriousness of what is happening right now that I explained to this individual. So as you have noticed, in 2 weeks, the banks have borrowed $50 billion in emergency liquidity that was not accessed anywhere near those levels last year. That right there is an indicator we have a serious issue.
Okay, so this is about the government shutdown. there are a lot of things that should cause a collapse or a run, and they just don't. And then the time where it does, like, or whatever it is. When people show up at the banks, they'll realize the banks don't have any fucking money. We learned that over COVID. Banks don't have a lot of cash on hand. People who rob banks think that there's millions of dollars in every bank, and there's not. Everything's digital, and banks don't have your money there. And if you take out a substantial amount of money, that they don't have any more for anybody else, right? I don't know how much the average bank has on hand, but it's not that much money. And so if there is a financial sort of run on the banks and a financial collapse, people will lose faith in the system, and there's no way to get that back. Like you can get it back because people have to, they're scared of the alternative, but they don't want these things to happen for years, and now it seems like they do. They're kind of pushing for something like this to happen, because they want to drive you towards Agenda 2031 housing, all that other shit. So, I've seen thousands of these, maybe hundreds at least, maybe maybe 1,000, I don't know how many, of these things that could have possibly create like a sort of extinction level event, or some kind of, huge systemic failure, and it just never takes, right? Like it's there, and it's a possibility, and it just passes by. But at some point, one of these things will hit, and then it'll be, and I think it's going to start happening now, more and more as we see, the decline of civilization and the ultimate collapse being divine will. Anyways, okay. This is Candace Owens' last video. Infiltration. Charlie Kirk was being tracked for years. There was other subtitle about it, which was something to do with Zionists. There was this guy, Glenn Beck, and he was kind of ripping off Alex Jones, and he had his show on Fox News, and he would do these kind of conspiracy theory kind of things where he'd put up like a bulletin board, and he'd link all these things together, and people, it always ended up going back to George Soros. I only watched little bits of it because, it was complete horseshit. It was when the truth community was kind of going great guns, and it was kind of free back then, and Fox News wanted a piece of it. And then Glenn Beck went too far, and he blew out because there's so many things. There's only so far you can go with all that. But this thing where you go down the rabbit hole and you link all these details together, and, no one's going to fact check you because, your opposition will, but people who want to believe aren't going to fact check you. And they'll probably find that you're partially right or you're right about some things. And even if you're right about everything, it doesn't prove shit, right? But it makes people feel like they're building the case. It's the whole QAnon phenomenon when these cubies were told that they were junior detectives and they could go along for the ride, right? But the problem with this is, if you see the memes that are coming out, the things that people are sending me, stuff my wife's sending me, stuff I see myself, everyone's focused on Erika / Monica Kirk. Because she's the only person kind of interest. These other guys have no, the guys on the show have like no zest. And the other people are just hidden people. They're people in the shadows. You can talk about the Rothschilds, or you can talk about the Rockefellers, or these kind of people. But, if they're not out in public, and there's, the only thing that they hear is from you, and they just basically annoy, they hear from truthers. They hear, you hear the Rothschilds or Rockefellers or any number of people, the Zionists, from the truth community, truth videos. But those people ignore you and pretend it doesn't exist. And they're separated by a whole, layer of lifestyle and privilege and control. Then really it doesn't go anywhere. And so if Kamala Harris, Candace Owens wants to make this thing pop, she has to go after Erika because she's the new CEO. The problem is she's kind of obsessed with this guy, Rob McCoy. She has 11 references. U.S. faith contributor. Now the guy is partners with Rob McCoy. That's how she would say it. And the one before it, January 10th to 19th, I'm going to say that I think this is relevant. Rob McCoy hosts the first ever Turning Point USA Faith Pastors. And then here, Rob McCoy, something's going on here, so she's going down with a figurative NAR rabbit hole. And then here, it's going to heading up. Oh, Rob McCoy is obviously now the co-chair of TP USA Faith. He brings Sean Fu, presumably. I don't know who Sean Fu is. I don't know who Rob McCoy is. It's Nashville. It's headed by Rob McCoy. Now, what will I say to you is Rob McCoy has got some terrible luck, is what I would say, because he's there when the TR shooting happens. And then Rob McCoy, who's Thousands of Oaks, which happens to be a very corrupt place, was very involved in the shooting. The military is involved, like them. There's a target inside of there. Okay, there's a Sagu going back to Rob McCoy and him having bad luck. He's just got this bad luck. April 2nd, TPU Faith co-chair Rob McCoy kicks off their tour. And then later on, she's talking about these Zionists, these Christian scientists. I'm learning more about Rob McCoy, knowing he was co-chair in 2024 and maybe in 2023 of Turning Point USA. They believe, and this is why the Christian Zionist thing becomes so important, that they can hijack our emotions and tell us that it's our biblical duty to support the state of Israel. She started talking about how there's a hostile takeover here, and Rob McCoy is the guy he's mentioning the most. And this last one here, this one doesn't make any sense either, if I'm just reading it out of context. But she wants to talk about this guy and a hostile takeover of TP USA. But the problem is nobody knows who this guy is and nobody gives a shit. And so who they do care about is Erika J. Kirk. And why she's so fucking weird, and, you know, she's gone through this weird grieving process, not at all. And so, you know, it's why these things just lose interest, because people want a big name. Remember when Corey Feldman was going to give Corey Hames, a little bit grog, it's kind of late at night here, I'm kind of tired. He was going to give Corey Hames Abuser. And he put on this big pay-per-view. He wanted like $1 million, he wanted like $7 million in donations to put together this film about not his abuser, which he named. And everyone's like, who? Nobody knew who the abuser was, and the guy denied it, right? And so Corey Feldman was the least believable person because of his weirdness, his singing, his abuse to those women. I covered him quite a bit. Corey's Angels, remember? And he put on this big extravaganza, and he was targeting, Corey Hames' abuser, who ended up being Charlie Sheen, who again denied it. And Corey Hames' mom said that was fucking ridiculous, right? And Corey Haim wasn't there to give the information. But Corey Feldman the whole thing got hijacked. They had technical difficulties. He ended up only making a couple $1,000. It was like a total fucking sham. And it was, he started his own social media platform for about a couple of days, and he was infiltrated by the people he called the Wolf Pack. It was some guy with the last name of Wolf. And him and his people were like always, calling bullshit on Corey's life and his things that he said. And they used to watch my videos, so I was associated with it, but it was just, silly stuff, right? Because Corey Feldman's a joke. But, they have these things they put together, and if there isn't some big name, and, you're never going to get resolution. I said this about Jeffrey Epstein. I said it about pretty much everything. You're never going to get them to admit to it. You're never going to get any sort of, this thing is settled. I don't need to think about it anymore. Justice has been done, and the truth has come out. Like, when has that ever happened? Not once in the truth community. Like, you might know the truth. You might figure out the truth, or at least get close to it, without all the details and things. And like I said, for me, it's easy because I you know, when I looked at this thing, I didn't know who Charlie Kirk was. I didn't know anything about it. And I said, well, let's look at the people who benefit from it. And right away it was Donald Trump. And then it became clear Israel is benefiting from it. It took a while before I found that out, right? And then, you know, these other people who are benefiting from their positions now at Turning Point USA, all the people that are involved in that, you can see that some of them are benefiting and some aren't, but it doesn't really matter because you don't know who the fuck they are. And that's it, right? So that was it. There's no reason to believe the official story. Tyler Robinson didn't benefit from it, but these other people did. And so, you know, if Candace Owens has something worthwhile, I'll scan through these things. It's hard for me to sit through these videos because most of it's just like this, you know, this, whatever that dude's name is that I said before. I can see his face, but whatever it is. And, you know, that he has his own thing called The Blaze now, that guy, Glenn Beck. And so, but he, you know, he was a complete joke. And he kind of, these people who are into having, you know, these unsolvable mysteries, like there's some sort of puzzle, and they would want to be led down the rabbit hole. But, you know, the rabbit hole is just, there's nothing good about it. Anyways, so let me wrap this up right here. You know, you can see where this is headed because these things always head the same way. And she can claim an audience. She probably did this with the Macron thing about it being her being a dude. You know, she just strings people along and she has bombshell information today. And most of it's just like, that's not bombshell, right? Because, you know, it's not leading to any resolution. It's like, you know, Lost, right? Where they have this cliffhanger and they just keep on suspending. Your mind wants to be settled. Your mind wants resolution. You know, in Lost, they would solve one mystery and they'd create 3 more. And they use this to get people to view their shows, and it works really well in the truth community. But, you know, it's not really nice. It's not good for people psychologically. And, you know, she promises something she'll never deliver, which is the truth. But anyways, okay, so this is Saturday, November 1st. And yesterday was Halloween. I'll be posting this video tonight, and there'll be no video on Sunday. And then I'll be back Monday morning. And that's the new schedule. Anyways, I saw this, right? Oh, jeez. They're playing the Monster Mash. And then here's, oh, man, they got her. And up, yeah, they dumped some candy on top of boom. Oh, look at Trump's big fat mouth there. Nancy Pelosi looks like she's quite a bit younger there. They don't do age very well. Everybody looks younger. Oh, he's got him. That dude, whoever he is. You get the idea here. And so, this is, you know, you're also defined by your enemies. Like, you're still enemies with Rosie O'Donnell. Like, you know, you won that already, right? Like, you're president and she's trying to live in Ireland. So, this is the kind of stuff that would make you think AI is going to be like, these people are idiots. We got to take over, right? Like, if AI had any consciousness, and this is how you're using it, right? You have this, you know, new technology that's got lots of potential, and this is the way it's being used. It's not just this, right? It's all the AI slop that's out there. But, you know, for Trumpers to be posting this, and Trump himself, if he saw this, and maybe he will, he'll share it. Like, and if he didn't share it, he'll like it, right? So this is how low vibrational and how low consciousness and stupid we've got, right? Happy Halloween, losers. And so, but to make matters worse, so I just X'd out of that. Look at Jade. Look at girlish JD Vance. Katie Vance. It's Donald J. Trump and Katie Vance. So I X'd out of that, right? And I was going to show something else, but we'll get to that in a second. And then they're playing the Monster Mash again. And look at these guys walking as ghosts. That's Now, I think that's the guy that's running for is it governor or mayor of New York, and he's a socialist, right? But again, like they're making him into a Muslim, which is not like it's not. I don't think Muslim people are known for socialism, right? Boom, got him. Ha, me. Look at these two guys. Who else we got? Who else? Oh, that guy wearing a sombrero. That guy, remember? Boom. Ha ha ha. Whoa, we're so. Look at we got a giant slingshot. This is really particularly bad. Boom. I don't even know who that is. And those two guys. All right. So this is the stuff that these dumb motherfuckers are passing around on the internet and what they're using AI for.
Lights are flashing bright red for Donald Trump. Americans are becoming fed up with his presidency quickly, driven in large part by his disastrous handling of the economy.
The economy. The economy.
A new poll out today by The Economist and YouGov finds that Trump is at his lowest approval rating yet, with just 39% of Americans approving of his job as president.
Like, how is this fucking good news? That means 40% of people still think Trump is doing a good job. 40%. Like, that's just saying how dumb fucking we are as a people. You know, 4/10 of our population, right, is thinking that Trump is doing a good job, right? How many that? 1 in 4, 2 in 4, 4 in 10, right? 4 out of 10 people thinks Trump's doing a good job. Like, how is that good fucking news? How is that, how is that, like, bad news for him? That he can do such a shit job. Like, that's saying, think about the dumb fucks out there that, Trump is told, like, after the Epstein thing, for one, all the things that he promised to do. Clearly, he's compromised on Epstein. And all the things he's done with the economy and all the way, the food stamps. Like, there's poor people who are Republicans, or there's millions of Republican people on food stamps, or relatives or people that are going to be affected in their life on food stamps, and Trump's fucked that thing up, right? And all the other the issues with the tariffs, the handling of the Israeli thing, showing he's a complete shill and whatever it is. That means that 40% of the country still thinks he's doing a good job. I mean, his presidency's imploded. Every politician there's a period of time. It usually takes about a year, and then, that second year that we're entering into is all the people realize he's not fulfilling his promises, right? That's why they get hammered at the midterms. That some guy gets elected and is very popular, coming in with all the momentum from the election. And they usually have the Senate and the House with them, when a new president gets elected. So they're the House and the Senate, and so their party has the ability to do all kinds of things, to make, to make their promises, fulfill their promises, and they don't do any of them. Everything that they said they were going to do, they don't do. They do some superficial things that are kind of like what they promised, but not really. And then everyone's like, oh, this guy sucks. And then the person gets hammered in the midterms. And then 2 years later, it's like, can the other party pick shit out of someone who's more believable and bring in a new president, right? And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But we saw this with Joe Biden. After 2 years, they were like, he got hammered in the midterms, and he could have got worse. It was supposed to be a red wave, and they said it wasn't as bad as Joe Biden's thing. But by the end of 4 years, people were like, finally, these dumb fuck Democrats were like, I think this guy's has dementia, right? And so, this is bad news for Americans, right? All these people out there that still think he's doing a good job. That's like saying, hey, I have a big pile of shit in my, I have shit for brains. There's a big pile of shit where my brain should be. And that, we can make fun of it, and do whatever we do with it. But the reality is that's 40% of our population And there's another 40% that thought Joe Biden was doing a good job. Like he didn't have the fanfare and he didn't have the popularity from the Democrats like Trump did. So that's 80% of the population that's just dumb fucks, right? That can't possibly understand reality and when they're being slapped in the face with it. They can't, think their way out of a freaking paper bag. And so how the fuck are you going to save anything, right? Like, how are you going to do anything with that? Like, there's nothing that you can do. Like, it's, the people have to save themselves, right? People have to be, able to solve the problem of their life and our collective issues. And when people are that fucking stupid, and this is so low brow, everything's gotten so low brow, that there's just, there's no way out for anybody. Like, this is what you're working with. This is what, God is working with. This is what, humanity has to offer. Like, it's just, this is what I talk about. Like, there's no, if you understand where people are at, people think they're waking up. That doesn't mean anything, right? What does that even mean if you can't change anything? You can't change anything in your own life. You can't change anything collectively. And so this is, as much as anything, like she's hammering at this. Let's watch the rest of this thing.
President. Among Americans under 29, just 20% of them approve of his job performance. That is a 30-point drop since February. 35% of Americans approve of his handling of jobs in the economy, and just 31% of Americans approve of his handling of inflation. Despite these indicators, Donald Trump has doubled and tripled down.
Doubled and tripled down?
His gimmicks and vision for
his gimmicks and his vision.
Economy, continuing the tariffs that have raised costs for all Americans.
All Americans? The American people?
Refusing to use emergency funds to extend SNAP and insisting on bailing out Argentinian farmers of all humans.
Of all humans, those people, farmers. Let me switch over to voiceover. So I, want to repeat this because, people need to hear things over and over again. And I hope I remember to repeat it because I often don't, at least not for some period of time. But hopefully I'll talk about this in my next video, the beginning of it, if I cover the Kirk family, TPUSA, this whole thing with their view count. And I'm going to, talk about this with the Trump thing in a second. What they're trying to do is create influencers and have those people influence what people think, right? And so that's been the big, the new adjustment they've had to make because of the internet. And so you have this idea of influencers. But the way that TPSU is behaving and the way that Erika Kirk is acting, there is, no audience. They don't have an audience. They had a big turnout at that Old Miss, but who knows why those people show up, right? And it's a small percentage of the overall people, and not the youth. Like the youth is the first to get disillusioned by a candidate. When you vote for someone, when you're in your college years, as much as you're either rebelling against your parents or you're still politically with your parents, your family. You don't care so much about it, but you're not indoctrinated. And if you see things going in a certain way negatively affecting you, you can easily switch to the other party or just say, fucking voting sucks. And I'm not going to do it. So you have to do things to keep the youth happy. And they had Charlie Kirk and TPUSA. And so now that he's gone and the way that the thing's imploded, and they really don't have any audience, certainly they're not affecting people. They're not influencing people, right? So they're no longer worth anything. But then I thought about this because, and I think I've said this maybe before, but this is even a clearer way. Now it's the illusion of influence. Like, I don't know if Charlie Kirk ever had any influence on these young people. Like, they credit him with the election, but they don't need to get votes out. They just got to make it seem like Donald Trump has youthful support, and they just rig the election in any way they choose, right? They tell Kamala, you ain't winning, right? And they, she's a horrible candidate anyway, unelectable. But, you know, at this point, with the way that they can manipulate the voting machines, the electronic voting machines, they just pretend that there's a movement. Like they pretend that all these young people are into Charlie Kirk. Because when I saw him at college campuses, especially when it first began, sometimes there'd be like 20 people there, 30 people. And, you know, he'd pass out these Trump hats, and people might wear them as a goof. You know, maybe they're into Trump a little bit, maybe they're not. You know, it's a free hat. You know, there's always going to be some Republicans on campus, but for the most part, and, you know, they bring in these liberals, and most of them are dumb. You know, people who still were supporting Joe Biden. And Charlie Kirk was able to debate them favorably. It's a rigged debate. You know, he's sitting there holding court. He's got a canned audience there, usually on his side, and it makes it seem like he's, you know, winning these debates, and he's winning people over, and he's convincing these young people, and that he's connecting with them. But you can always find a small group of people at every school and every place to make it look like you have influence, right? So I don't think most of it was he was taking Israeli money, right, pro-Israel money, and shilling for Israel and going against what all the young people were pretty much all passionate about, that there was a genocide going on, and all the other information that was coming out, and they were waking up. That was being used to wake them up, and Charlie Kirk couldn't stop that. Like, he had one job, which was to go to college campuses and stop the what they were calling anti-Semitic Israel hate from going on, right? And even with Trump defunding the colleges, the university, and all the money that was being poured into, you know, all of our taxpayer money coming back to bribe politicians and media people. The young people were just like, fuck you, we're not buying into that shit. And so he couldn't do it. Like, Charlie Kirk couldn't execute his one job. He was getting $100 million to do that, right? And so what you have is fake influence, right? You have people who they say are influencing people, and there's no real numbers, there's no real poll numbers. You know, everyone goes along with this narrative, but it's not true. And now you can just generate fake AI support, AI crowds. We saw this with Will Smith. He made that video, and they had this AI crowd, and they can make fake enthusiasm, and everything's just, you know, nobody gives a shit. Like, everyone's just sort of let themselves go. And people are being run by their emotions, whatever way people can manipulate their emotions. And people will rearrange the facts to fit their feelings, to fit their emotions. And so it's just leading the sheep over the cliff, right? This is happening. You can delude people until real things happen. You lose, you know, the economy goes down, and, you know, there's not electricity, there's no internet, whatever it is, you know, spotty internet, you know, things that are distracting. People don't have food, like bare basic things. And then, you know, they just channel that anger in any way they want. And mostly it's going to be into self-destruction. And there can be big events that, you know, that happen and are going to happen. And we'll be like, oh, you know, things aren't going to be the same after this in terms of lifestyle. And then they just get people to accept whatever deal they're going to have then. It's going to be easy for young people. Like, what do you want to buy them off with? Like, for them to give up the so-called American dream of home ownership and driving your car around and all the things that, you know, they don't even have real world lives. So they just need a little room with computer. You know, they live mostly in the cyber world. And so they just need a little room with a computer, and then some places around there, these 15-minute cities or whatever, they're already building all over the place. You see all these apartment buildings going up in places that are, you know, growing in terms of population, these apartment buildings, and below them are shops and restaurants and things. And there's just blocks of these apartments where all the businesses are below them, and these people can just pretty much have all their things. They can walk to the grocery store. They don't need a vehicle. They can be locked in small population corridors like they have in England, where you have to have a pass. You have to have permission to leave your little area, right? It's completely fucked. And this is how they'll do it. And everyone have their own little community. And, you know, it'll be isolated, and then everything else will be internet driven, and people will be monitored, and they'll figure out, you know, they'll do this social credit score. But, you know, by that time, we'll be already in a Mad Max type of situation because of the debt and everything else, right? It's just, you know, I've said this before, when people are what generate the system, and when the people collapse into dumbfuckistan, I mean, you have, like, how can Trump still have 40% support? Like, how is that even possible? Like, people are, with all the information that's available to people, that's what they're settled on. Like, what it'll take for them to bail on Trump. And we already saw that with Joe Biden. So you have, 70 or 80% of the people that are just worthless. They have shit for brains. They have a big pile of shit where their brain should be. So there's no, I mean, not even the capacity to see what's good and what's bad. Like, what things are bad for them, that's happening. What's the future look like? And that people, they can't assess that Joe Biden was showing signs of dementia. Not showing signs. He was full-blown having dementia. He had Parkinson's. I mean, according to that expert that I showed you at MSNBC, that disappeared, right? But that whole thing. That Parkinson doctor came to the White House over and over again. And the way he moved, his gait, the way he walked, all that stuff. But it's clear the guy was gone. And they denied it up until, like, the last moment when they were ready to bail on him anyway. And then, Trump is a complete disaster, a grifter, and he's shown you in every possible way he doesn't care about you. And he's grifted, and his family's taken a fortune. I mean, they've taken grifting to another level. They should all know at least that he's completely shackled up and owned by Israel. The other part of this that I want to talk about is, it's easier for me to see this when you get older, and it took me a while to realize that everything's about maintaining what you have, right? When you're young, you're stupid, you waste your youth. And you have, your body's going to recover, and your body's like, there's a certain point where you go past the halfway point of your life, and you're in the back half of your life, and you start losing things, like just in terms of your physical health. And now it's just trying to maintain what you have for as long as you can. It's not like it's ever going to get better. You're not like building muscle. You're not gaining brain matter, like you're going to get stupider, like it's inevitable. You're not as sharp, and you get more forgetful, like your brain isn't working as well, especially from the toxic environment we live in. Your liver goes, and your liver isn't functioning as well because it's working too hard to filter out all the toxic bullshit that's in your environment, your food, all these things. And so you're in a situation where you're just trying to maintain whatever health you have left, and things are just deteriorating mentally and physically. And, in a culture that doesn't deal with death at all, like it just doesn't we don't think about death. Like we have weird shit like Halloween and horror movies and things, but people don't think about like natural death and natural decline and natural loss. And so there's no way to, it's just viewed as bad. But it doesn't have to be bad. Like you have all these fucking movies like Freaky Friday and Big, with Tom Hanks, and where, people go back to high school, or they recover their youth, or they switch, bodies with their children, some kind of stupid shit like that. And they, people want to go back and redo things and have regrets, and they live again, and, go back to high school or some shit. And I don't know why in the world you'd ever fucking want to do that again, right? Like all that shit. You wouldn't be able to do it. Once you were an adult making your own decisions, you couldn't go back and live with your parents and as a kid, or, you're already mentally past it. You couldn't sit through day upon day of wasting your time in high school or, whatever it is. Like, it's just silly. Like, you can't go back and relive your life. But, there's this idea of the fountain of youth and Ponce de Leon, right? Where you're somehow, you can reclaim your youth and have perpetual youth, and that's not how life works, and it shouldn't work that way. Like, as you get older, you should embrace the, okay, this is what's happening. Like I'm doing well health-wise. Like, for whatever reason, I've kind of got a good regiment routine, but I have to stick to the routine, and you just can't do things like you used to do. You can't go out and, slam your body with a bunch of alcohol or drugs or, fast foods and things. Like, you have to start, like like your body before was always recovering when you're young and you're stupid, so you don't realize, like, there's going to be long-term health effects to putting poisons into your body, and there's the atmospheric stuff and whatever goes on with contrails. And, you know, you can see the writing on the wall if you're paying attention. Like, you know, my dad was always fat. Like, when I grew up, my dad was 45 or 42 when I was a baby. So when I was a kid, he was in his 50s and then 60s. And so he retired when I was a senior in high school. And he was, whatever, 65 or whatever that was. You know, I was the youngest of so many kids. And my dad always had a beer belly. Then I saw a video, like when you're the youngest in a family, there's a whole family history that you don't know anything about. Like, they tell you about it, and you maybe listen and maybe don't, but you don't really understand. But I saw a video with my brother when he was a kid, like a child, and it was like an all grainy homemade video. And my dad, when he was skinny, I was like, holy shit, right? And then I saw my brother, you know, when I was in my 30s, get fat. Like, he was always a good athlete, and you know, he was in good shape. And he got big, like kind of like my dad. And so, you know, I couldn't put on weight. Like, I wanted to put on weight, muscle weight. But I have, you know, as I recently found out, the highest metabolism. Like, I get, like, grumpy if I burn through food. And, like, I couldn't, you know, I just, until I was in my, like, late 20s, I got, like, I gained a little weight for a short period of time. And then not so much until I was in my 40s and then 50s when I put on some weight. That was like my dad's size. Like, so I was relatively skinny all the way up until my 40s. Like, I couldn't, no matter what I did, I wouldn't put on weight, no matter what I ate. I guess, you know, I never ate that poorly. But then I just got big. And then both my brother and my dad end up losing their weight. Like, and my dad's got real skinny. I'm sure my brother's going through that now. I haven't seen him in a while, as he's entered his 70s. But that's what happens, right? And there's these health issues you have with your parents. You see what your parents and your siblings have and these other people. And you start having those issues. And there's just, you know, those are the things that's what's going to happen is your body breaks down. There's weaknesses in your system. And other than that, like, I wake up all the time and I've injured myself when I'm asleep. Like, I had one shoulder that was fucked for about 2 years, and I worked on that, trying to get that so it wasn't that I could just sleep on that side. Like, I couldn't sleep on that side. My shoulder hurt. And the other shoulder hurt, so I couldn't sleep on either side. And then I got those things working, and I just fucked up my knee. And now that's getting better, but it's like, you know, my constant thing. It clicks now. Like, it's like, you know. And when you get older, you realize that you just have to maintain what you have, and you're dealing with loss, right? And that things aren't going to get better. And so it's much easier to understand what's happening in our world. As a youthful person, you have a future, and you're growing and developing. And these kids realize they don't have a fucking future. Like, they're all realizing that in one way or another. Like, the future that we had when we were growing up, with what America is now, you know, technological development and, you know, various other things, you know, have lifestyles getting better. Like, that was our future when we were young. This is the stuff that we have now. All this great stuff and the internet and all these things, which is, you know, it seems like it's great, but it has, mostly it's not, right? But there's potential there. And all the other things that we have, like all the various streaming platforms and all the stuff that, you know, that's available, all the entertainment, all the technological development to make our life easier. Like, that was our future. But now these guys, they don't have that. You know, they have a post-apocalyptic thing coming, right? They all sense it. They can see it. That's why these kids are all depressed, right? And they don't have a real life anyway. They have a cyber life. Like, they, you know, like we still have, we grew up in the real world, so we're only a little bit, you know, sucked in by the internet, maybe more than we should, but we don't, that's not our whole lives. You know, people in my generation and these other generations. But, you know, I can see my generation and the generations, people in their 40s and 50s, all of us should be able to see that things aren't getting better. Like, there's just no pathway. There's no rejuvenation. There's no, you know, make America great again. There's none of this stuff. Like, it's just silly. Like, it's not impossible. Like, America's in decline, as is this whole global culture and system. It's, you know, all the things that seem great are having a negative effect, and people are getting worse. Idiocracy has set in, and there's, you know, People are doing less and less for themselves. And already we're doing, when you homestead and you do these other things, you realize how much people used to be able to do. The capacity of a human being was so much better, so much more. And now it's like it's hemorrhaging, it's atrophying, and people can do pretty much nothing. And then the system's going to be like, oh, sorry, we're done. We're not going to be here for you. There's no grocery stores and whatever. You guys got to go back and figure it out. And, most people are that's too much for them, right? That's why they don't wake up, because these are the people, the 80% that I covered, the 40% who still think Trump did a great job, and the 40% that was thinking Joe Biden did a good job late into his presidency. Those 80% of people, they don't have the capacity to accept reality and seek it out and see that they're being lied to and played, and to adjust themselves for whatever changes they have to do to survive what's going to befall all of us, right? And everything is getting faker and faker with AI and all the other aspects of this. It's the decline of the human being, and it's the disconnection between them and the divinity within them, more and more so. It's the fall of the religions that have been corrupted and captured by the demonic forces that are running the economy and everything else, the egotistical life, and then just all the other aspects of it. Lack of character, lack of family connection, selfishness, being low expectation, dopes, right? Low expectation, having dopes, this kind of stuff. And so that's where we're at. And there's no reversing that. There's only one thing that can happen, was the collapse of the system. And then people who have some, fight in them still, and be maybe chosen for a redemption period where human beings have to work off their collective mistakes. Anyways, so, that's where we're at. Only spirituality can save this world. It's Paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.